I want to welcome everyone to today's ATA webinar presentation, a step-by-step manual, how to give a school outreach presentation, and with a bonus, tips for capturing a winning photo. That's for the school outreach contest, which you will get a free registration to the next ATA annual conference. I want to put a plug in there. Thank you all for being here. My name is Mary David, and I'm the webinar coordinator at ATA headquarters, which is just outside Washington. I'll be moderating today's webinar with Lucy Brooks from ECPD. She's in the United Kingdom. We have a few things to tell you before we start. First, the webinar is being recorded, and all of you will receive a link to the recording by email, and usually that's within 24 hours of the event. So you'll have an opportunity to replay the presentation. But do make sure this email doesn't go in your junk email box. You know how good things sometimes end up there. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 60 minutes. Occasionally a presentation runs a bit longer. And if you need to leave right on time, just do, because you're going to have that recording to catch up with whatever you missed. All attendees are muted, and this is the best way so that we can keep going without a lot of questions in the middle. But we do have a question and answer session at the end. So we want you to ask questions. Do that by typing them into the question pane or question box on your screen. We'll collect these and we'll get to as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. There's a handout for today's webinar. A link to the handout will be sent to you by email. It's also on the web page for this webinar. There's a link to download it. And with that, I would like to turn today's webinar over to presenter Molly Urich.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming today and joining me for my first webinar. My name is Molly Urich. I'm a school outreach volunteer, and I won the ATA School Outreach Contest in 2015 for a photo I took with a group of students in Spain. Like Mary said, there is a handout that comes with this webinar, so don't worry about taking notes or writing down any links. Everything important will be included in the handout. And Megan McCallum, who is the School Outreach Coordinator, she's here with us today as well. She'll be participating in the webinar with an interview to tell us about one of her school outreach presentations. And then she'll also be with me at the end to help me answer any questions you may have. So with that said, let's get started with the step-by-step manual. Okay. The goal of this webinar for me is to make this as easy as possible for you. I want to make giving a presentation as easy as possible. So I've broken this into a series of steps. Step one is to find your personal motivation for giving a school outreach presentation. Step two, discover which age group is best for you. Step three, find the right school to give a presentation. Step four, prepare your presentation. Step five, manage your nerves. Step six, guidelines for taking a winning photo for the school outreach contest. And then we'll wrap up with any questions you may have. So we'll start with step one. Find your personal motivation for giving a school outreach presentation. This is something that's really helpful to keep in the back of your mind before, during, and even after giving a school outreach presentation to help you keep motivated throughout the process. I would say the most common motivation is simply to encourage language students to join our great and growing profession. We as translators and interpreters all know that our profession is great and growing, but unfortunately students don't really know we exist sometimes. So it's good to get out there and let them know that we exist and that this is a possible career choice for them. And that's where my personal motivation comes from when I give my school outreach presentations. I was lucky enough to go to a Spanish immersion school when I was growing up. So my kindergarten through high school education was mostly in Spanish, some in English. And surprisingly enough, translation and interpreting was never ever brought up. And by I mean never. So I kind of ran into translation and interpreting by accident. I studied Spanish in college at the University of Minnesota, and about halfway through my major, I discovered that my own university had a translation and interpreting program because I found it within the list of courses that I could choose from, because some of the classes fulfilled some of those credits for my degree. And so I decided to do it. You know, but when I look back on my bilingual education, I really wish that someone would have mentioned it earlier, so I could have considered it earlier before getting into college. The second point would be to educate future clients. So all of these linguists-to-be that we're targeting with our presentations, in class they're sitting next to a lot of clients-to-be. So it's a great combination of outreach to future linguists and future clients alike. Obviously not all of the students in those classrooms are going to become translators and interpreters, but they may end up finding them in their career in the future, and they'll have you in the back of their mind when they get older and have to deal with that. The third point is to get continuing education points if you are an ATA certified translator, and there's more information about how you can do that on the website. And the last one is to win a school outreach contest, which means that you would win free registration to next year's conference. You can keep in mind that this is an ongoing contest that's repeated year after year. So if you don't do it this year, you can do it next year. This contest repeats every year, so that's always an option. And if I put aside my inspiring motivation for doing school outreach, which is inspiring students become translators and interpreters, my first school outreach presentation was done with the aim of winning the school outreach contest, so I could afford to go to my first ATA conference. And it was a big help for me. And then I loved it so much that I give presentations all the time. So if that's the main reason that you want to give a presentation, that's fine too. Step 2, discover which age group is best for you. Where do you feel most comfortable? You can give a school outreach presentation to any age group that you would like. And you have to think about which age group you're most comfortable interacting with in your daily life. I personally don't work well with elementary and preschool students because I feel like they can't understand me, even though I'm sure they can, but I feel more comfortable with middle and high school students because they're a little bit more fun, but they're still adults. But I know this after years of working in schools, and I can understand that if you haven't had much interaction with children in your life, or you haven't worked in schools, or you've never given this type of presentation before, it might be harder for you to decide where to aim your efforts. So I recommend thinking of younger family members, or as silly as this may sound, visits to the grocery store. Like if you're in line with a 3-year-old behind you with his mom, do you say hi? Do you try and talk to them? Or do you kind of shy away like I do because you don't know what to say? Or do you find yourself gravitating more towards conversation with adults? Maybe you need to focus your efforts on university or adult academic and ESL classes. These are things that can help you figure out where you would like to go. And adult education or ESL classes are also an option. I once presented to a group of adult ESL students in Minnesota and found it to be very, very rewarding. And you might be surprised to find that your local school district has an adult academic program that provides ESL or GED classes to adults. And you may never have heard about these centers because if you haven't needed them, you probably don't know you're there. I know about them because my mom works there, and that's how I ended up giving a presentation. And my presentation was to a classroom that was full of immigrants and refugees from all throughout the world, and I was very surprised that almost all of them had interacted or worked with an interpreter before, but had never thought of it as a possible career choice in the future. Some of these students had really high levels of English, and they were planning on going to university, planning on studying, and so I said, well, there's a translation and interpreting program at the University of Minnesota that you can look into. And they were really excited. So even these adults who had worked with interpreters before had never thought of it as a real career path. So it was really, really nice to see their faces light up with, oh my gosh, I could help my community, form part of my new community in the States, and have a career all at the same time. So that was a very rewarding presentation, and definitely an option if you would like to give a presentation with adults. This is a super helpful table that I got from Tess Woody's 2014 school outreach webinar. This webinar is free, and it's also available on the ATA website if you wanted to listen to it to get even more ideas. The table organizes, as you can see, presentation ideas by age group. So if after my last slide and my weird grocery store tip, if you're not sure which age group you'd feel most comfortable working with, you can use this table to help you decide which presentation you feel like giving based on content. Of course, you don't have to give a presentation with this specific content in it, but it can give you an idea of what works for different audiences based on age group and what you feel you might be most comfortable talking about. So obviously with elementary, it'll be more visuals, games, easier types of concepts. Middle and high school will be a little bit more advanced. They like jokes, translation bloopers, and then in college, you're obviously going to be talking about bigger questions, like how much money can I make, right? Which is what college students are really concerned about. So this is something that can be of help, and this table is in the handout as well for your reference later. Step 3, find the right school to give a presentation. So after you've thought of what age group you want to work with, you'll have to think of a school to give your presentation. The first step to think is, what schools do you have easy access to? Of course, if you have children, your child's school is a very easy and accessible option. Maybe you have a neighbor with a kid. That would be a good place to start too. If you know a teacher in a school, even if they aren't a language teacher, they probably know a language teacher and could put you in touch with them. And your alma mater is a really good place to start. Your undergraduate or graduate university is a great option, or even if you studied abroad in college to strengthen your foreign language skills, that's a good place too. Of course, you're not going to fly across an ocean to give a school outreach presentation, but you could do a school outreach presentation over Skype, and I'll be giving you an example of how you can do that a little bit later in the presentation. So if you don't have easy access to a school, you can find a reason to contact a school near you. So the first two options are quite easy reasons, so career day and job fairs. So you can call the school in your area and find out when they have that. And if not, language classrooms with your language. And with your language, I mean if they give a class with your language, especially if you work with a rare language, like, I don't know, in the States that could be Chinese, or German isn't quite so common at this time in many public schools. If you find a classroom that teaches your language, that would be a good place to start. And any language immersion school, like my school where I went when I was a kid, is a good place since all of the kids are bilingual. They've got their classes in their foreign language. Even if it's not a language you work with, I'm sure they would be very happy to hear from a translator. And to find language immersion schools in your area, you can do a quick Google search. I was very surprised when I did a Google search on immersion schools in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, where I'm from. There are Spanish, German, French, Chinese, Ojibwe, and Hmong immersion schools just in Minnesota. Minnesota isn't the highest population state, so I'm sure if you're in bigger cities, there's even more immersion schools to choose from with a wider variety of languages. And then the last one is schools with high diversity. So a school outreach presentation that focuses on the value of bilingualism brings a lot of happiness and motivation to children that speak a language other than English at home. So using the example once again of Minneapolis, there are definitely areas of Minneapolis that have more Spanish speakers or Hmong speakers, and you could target those schools to go there. You know, here in Spain, I have a number of American friends who are raising their kids in English at home, and those kids are usually embarrassed to speak English or their home language outside of the home. I've tried, and they don't want to. Kids don't really like being different, and they don't like, they're a little shy to share their language. So when a translator comes in and shows them that bilingualism is a really cool and good thing and has a career path, sometimes you'll see them puff up their chests and say, oh, well, I'm bilingual, that's cool. And that's something really fun to see. So schools with high language diversity are also a really good place to target your efforts. And if you're approaching a school that isn't familiar with you, they may ask for additional information before they let a stranger in to talk to their students. So you're going to want to send your resume or professional profile, your website or a link to your listing in the ATA directory, which shows that you're a professional. You can also include the link to the ATA School Outreach Program homepage to show what we're all about and to show what our goals are. And then in the email or however you decide to send the information, you're going to want to include a cover letter explaining why you're interested in giving the presentation, why it's important to you, and what your goals are with the presentation. And don't worry, like I said before, we're trying to make this as easy as possible for you. So on the School Outreach website, as you can see here, we have some cover letters, pre-written cover letters that you can use. Once again, all of these links are in the handout, so don't worry about writing them down. And with that, we'll go on to step 4. Once you've chosen the school, you've chosen the age group, you're going to have to prepare your presentation. But before you start to even think about preparing your presentation, make sure you ask the teacher some very important questions. How many students will be in the audience? If you plan on doing interactive activities, this will help you plan all of that better. If you're going to a language class and plan to use language examples, what is their level? What will they be able to understand? Usually the teachers are very excited about your visit, so you can run any examples or questions you have by them. If you're going to use language examples, send it to the teacher and say, oh, do you think the kids will understand this? And if not, how can I adjust it? Is it too easy? Is it too hard? The teacher is a great resource when you're preparing your presentation. You'll also want to know how much time you'll have to speak to the group so you can plan accordingly. You know, some teachers might say, oh, I'm in exam season, I can only give you 20 minutes, or you can have the whole class. I've actually given presentations where I go in 2 days in a row because I didn't have quite enough time to finish on the first day, or I wanted to do more than one activity with the students. And sometimes the teachers are open to that too. And then this is very important. What resources are available in the classroom? If you're going to use any maps, do they have pull-down maps? Do they have an overhead projector, a laptop hookup, a desktop? What you don't want to happen is to prepare a PowerPoint presentation on your laptop and show up there with your laptop and find out that you need to use their computer with the presentation on a flash drive, okay? So you want to make sure you have all of that figured out beforehand. And my recommendation would be to avoid using the internet in the classroom. Even if the school says they have internet or Wi-Fi connection, luck sometimes just has it that you will show up and Wi-Fi won't be working that day. So save any videos to your computer. If you want to use Google Translate as an activity, you know, download any pictures or save pictures, screenshots of Google Translate beforehand, just in case. You know, you could try to use internet, and if it's not working, but always have a backup because internet in schools can be spotty. After you've talked to the teacher, and before you prepare anything else, you have to check out all of the presentation resource materials on the School Outreach webpage. It is full of stuff that you can use. And once again, we have tried to make this process as easy as possible for you as a presenter. So this is a screenshot of the School Outreach website of the presentation resource materials part of our site. And the goal of this area is to give you access to materials you can use in making presentations or directly use the presentations that are available on this website. As you'll see marked in red here, the material is organized by grade level. So you've got elementary school students, middle school students, high school students, and college and graduate students. And we're always updating resources as they come in. So if you look at the website one day and you don't find anything you like, feel free to check back later. We try and update it as much as we can. And this is also another little screenshot of presenting to elementary school students page. Each grade level includes a section on what to say, how to say it, extra credit, and presentation materials. So it's full of tips and resources. There's everything from presentation outlines to handouts and to full PowerPoint presentations. You might find something that you would like to use, or you could even use the materials for ideas to create your own presentation. It could save you a lot of time in the end. So I really recommend that once you've chosen your age group, you come here and take a look, because maybe you can just download a presentation and give it, and that way you don't have to prepare anything. You are free to use absolutely everything on the website. Just make sure to acknowledge the person who volunteered their material for your use. And you can see here that below each presentation there's a please acknowledge and then the name of the person who created the material. And I wanted to give you some ideas of what you can do during your presentation. There's lots of different creative things that you can do, and one of my favorite presentations that I heard about this year was by Rika Mitrick, who won this year's School Outreach contest. And Rika presented at her daughter's preschool because her daughter's preschool has a bilingual program, a Japanese program, sorry, called the Panda class. And so the students in this class are all bilingual. And as I said before, I don't really identify with preschoolers and making them understand what I'm saying, so I found her presentation to be super creative for getting 3-year-olds to understand translation and interpreting. So she explained translation by reading a Japanese picture book, which you can see on the screen, called Guri and Gura. So she read the Japanese picture book to the children, and she had an English-speaking teacher from another class come in to listen to the reading. And the teacher kind of put a puzzled look on her face and, oh, I don't understand. So the children could understand and were worried that the teacher couldn't. So then Rika translated the book into English for the teacher, and she saved the day. Rika said that the children were very relieved to see that the teacher wasn't being left out of this wonderful story, and that she had a great time with that. To explain interpreting, Rika did a parent-teacher conference role play. So she played the interpreter. A Japanese teacher played a mom who couldn't speak English, and the English-speaking teacher held the conference. So the students got to watch like a little play of interpreting. And the last part of her presentation included 2 interactive activities to get the kids involved in seeing how it works. To demonstrate translation, Rika drew a little cat on the whiteboard and asked the students to translate the image into words. She said some of the older students in the class were able to write cat in both English and Japanese. So they translated pictures into words. And then she demonstrated interpreting by asking one of the younger students to thank the teacher for helping with the presentation by interpreting thank you from Japanese into English. And as a side note here, this is a picture that Rika submitted to the school outreach contest in 2009, and she did not win for this picture, but I think it's a great picture, and it's also proof that even if you submit once and you don't win, you might win with a different submission in the future. And I'll show you her winning picture later in the webinar. Example 2 is a presentation that I gave to middle school students in Spain. So I worked as a cultural ambassador and teaching assistant for the Spanish Ministry of Education for 6 years. And I used one of my own students, one of my own classes, to do the school outreach presentation. And these were all students that were in the bilingual program in Spain. So they had half of their classes in English and half of their classes in Spanish. And the goal of my presentation was to tackle their use of Google Translate to do homework. So I suppose many of you know that language students all around the world love to use Google Translate to do their homework because they think they're going to trick the teacher into thinking that they know how to write wonderful papers in English that just don't make any sense. Those were at least my students. So I wanted to show them that they could do better than Google Translate, even as middle schoolers. And I started off my presentation by introducing translation and interpreting, explaining the difference and specializations and all of that. And then I moved on to the Google Translate portion. I showed them real-life photos of not so accurate translations from English into Spanish. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, éxito aquí means success here, not exit only. And the kids got a huge kick out of this and were wondering who could do such a bad job with the translation at Starbucks. So I told them we were going to put this same exit only into Google Translate, and I asked them by a show of hands if they thought it would produce a better translation into Spanish than what you could see in the picture. And I would say about 75% of the class thought that Google Translate was going to give us a correct translation. So I put exit only into Google Translate, and the result was única salida. And única salida, if you don't speak Spanish, is the only exit. So the kids agreed that it was closer, but not quite perfect. And I repeated this activity about 5 times. And after each Google Translate example, I would ask them to fix and find the correct translation. So just as many people, when they're starting to learn about translation, in the beginning they were translating very literally and they weren't really translating correctly. But by the 5th example, they were spot on. And I think I hit my goal with teaching them that Google Translate isn't a good way to do their homework. I haven't followed up with their teacher to see if they've stopped, but I'll just think in my head that they stopped because they realized that they're better translators than Google Translate. And I finished up my translation activity, well, my translation presentation with a crafty activity. And this is the photo for which I won the school outreach contest in 2015. And like I said, when I was a teaching assistant for 6 years, I ended up choosing this school because, and this class specifically, because the students were from all around the world. So they had high linguistic diversity, specifically in this classroom. And I had all the students translate their names from English into their native language. As you can see in the picture, there's Spanish, French, Russian, Arabic, and the local dialect in this region of Spain called Asturian. And there's also Romanian in there as well. And for me, there were two big highlights of this activity. One included the boy whose comic bubble is written in Arabic. He didn't know how to write in his native language. Like I mentioned before, this was actually a 2-day presentation. So on the first day, I did the Google Translate activity, and I asked them to go home and to do this translation into their native language. And they came back the next day with it written out, and then we did the speech bubbles in class all together. So this boy with the green Arabic speech bubble, he went home and came back to school the next day, and he was super proud to show off his native language to his classmates. He came to class with the entire Arabic alphabet written out by his parents, and after we finished taking the picture and everything, he spent the remainder of the class writing everyone's names in Arabic. And this was great to see. Also, like I mentioned before, some of these kids who speak a different language at home, you know, they maybe don't like to be different, and they're a little shy about it. And I had tried talking to him about his native language a number of times, and he would kind of change the subject or just ignore me altogether. And it was great to see him excited about sharing his native language and excited to write his name and be in a picture. The second big highlight came from the boy you see named Oscar. He told me that he is now considering a career in translation. So after we finished up the activity, he said, "Oh, Teacher Molly, I think I'll be a translator one day," which was really cool. This full presentation with all of the Google Translate activities is available for download on the School Outreach website under Middle School Resources. So if you are interested in using it or taking a look at it, you can definitely do that. And example 3, this is also a wonderfully creative presentation, is by Megan McCallum, our School Outreach Coordinator, and she did a Skype visit with a university in France. So we're going to have a little interview with her to talk about her presentation. Are you there, Megan?
Hello, Molly.
Hi,
Thanks
Megan.
for having me visit your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for coming. My big question, first question, was how did you choose your audience and why?
Sure. So, as you've mentioned in the presentation, I do tend to have a personal preference for the age group that I like to present to. So I feel that I connect really well with university level students and also graduate level students. I did do a graduate program in translation, and I just felt really great about learning translation in that environment, and I feel that I connect with those students really well. So pretty much all along my presentations have been exclusively to that level of students. And so how I got connected with this specific audience was I had a contact who was a former colleague of mine who is a professor in a translation graduate program, and he is located in Dijon, France. And so he knew that I was had moved on to do freelance translation and that I was also interested in presenting to students. So he invited me to come visit his classroom. So that was a really great way to get it all set up. It wasn't difficult at all to organize, and he worked with me to just make it work for my schedule and to be able to visit over Skype. So what really attracted me to this type of presentation is that the students already had a really good foundation of what translation was and how it can how you can start a career in translation, but they didn't really know a lot of the real world aspects because so far their experience had really just been academic. So they were interested in knowing how I personally started translating, how I moved on from a graduate program to starting to freelance, and really everything that happened in between. So this was something that I really felt passionate about talking about, so I was really excited to visit with these students.
That's great. That's super different from the presentations that I give, where you have to explain, you have to start with just explaining what translation and interpreting is from the beginning. So that's totally different. That's interesting.
Right, right. So they were very comfortable with what translation technically is, but they really wanted to know about how do I turn this into a real life career and how does it really work once you're out there in the real world.
Right. Well, that's great. How was the preparation process different from a normal school outreach visit?
So obviously the one big difference was that I visited over Skype. So I'm located in the US and I was visiting with this university in France. So rather than, as Molly mentioned earlier, rather than flying across the ocean to go visit in person, luckily we were able to set this up over Skype. So we did have to coordinate a little bit of logistics. So for example, we had to figure out a time that would work well. Obviously the class did meet at a certain time of day, so it just so happened that with the time difference and everything, it did turn out to be a convenient time for me as well in the US. But we did have to kind of discuss that for a bit to figure that out. And then really just making sure that the connection was strong enough in the classroom and that I would be able to give an effective presentation without it seeming too choppy or really disconnected. So I wanted to make sure that even though it was done through a computer, that I could still connect with the students hopefully as effectively as I could in person. One thing that we kind of organized that was different from what I would normally do for an in-person visit is that we thought that to make the best use of our time, since we did have kind of a limited time, I think it was maybe 45 minutes or an hour, but to really make the best use of that time, we decided that I would introduce myself via a video that the students could watch on their own time before my visit. So what I did was I created a video just from my webcam on my computer, just introducing myself, basic educational background, and what I had done in my career since my master's program, and then what I did was I uploaded it for the students to watch. So I used the website Vimeo, but this could also be done via YouTube. And then what I did was I asked the students to watch the video and leave comments on the video. And so then I would have a really good idea of what specifically they wanted to hear in my presentation. And I think this went really well. I got a lot of really great questions from the students, and it gave me a really clear idea of what I should focus my presentation on.
Yeah, and I suppose you could even use those ideas for future presentations to know what graduate students are most curious about.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. So how did the presentation go? Did it go well? Were there any problems with it being online?
There really weren't. I think there may have been just a few instances of maybe the connection cutting out for just a second, but overall it was really successful, and I felt that, again, even though it was virtual, I did feel that the students were very engaged. One thing that I think helped this was that the professor asked the students to come up to approach the computer in the classroom and specifically ask me questions almost face-to-face at the end of my presentation. So instead of kind of calling out from the back of the classroom, the students actually came up to the computer and we had almost like a one-on-one chat for each of their individual questions, but it was still audible for the rest of the class. So I think this was a really cool, unique way to make it just a little bit more personal. And they did have a lot of really great questions that maybe I hadn't touched on yet in my presentation, and it just made the presentation feel a little bit more interactive.
Yeah, that sounds nice. What questions did the students ask you about becoming a translator?
So like I mentioned, they did have a really firm grasp on what translation is as a task, but they really were curious about how can I make this work as a career. So they were wondering almost like middle steps between, you know, if I know I want to do freelance, can I do that right away? Or do you recommend any type of job to look for in between to get experience? Maybe, for example, at an agency or some type of project management type work. So they really wanted to know the nuts and bolts of really specific details of how to make this work as a career and kind of help them make a general career plan that they might be interested in seeking out. So I really provided a lot of business career type tips for them, and I think that that was really helpful for them.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I think, yeah, that's great for college students especially. They want to know where to start, right?
Right, right. And they had no idea, like how do I set my rates? How do I market my services? How do I find clients? How do I choose a specialization? So really, just any type of tips to help them get started and make that transition between being a student and feeling really comfortable with actually translating, but then not really knowing how to turn that into a career.
Cool. And have any of the students been in touch with you since your presentation?
Yes, actually, I did get a few follow-ups. I got a few emails asking more questions or asking for advice on specific ideas that they might have had about potential clients or agencies to contact. And then I received a few LinkedIn connections as well, just to stay in touch in general. So that was pretty great.
Oh, that's cool. And just out of curiosity, did you do your presentation in English or in French?
I did it in English. The students happened to be all studying English, French, and I believe they had a third language as well. So they were all very comfortable in English, but then we had a few examples in French, and then I believe some of the questions they were more comfortable asking in French. So we had a little bit of French thrown in, but the presentation was in English.
Oh, great. Great.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to share about your presentation?
I think overall, Skype is a really great way for whatever reason, if you are not able to make it to the classroom. It doesn't matter if it's halfway across the world, or it could be even in your own state or nearby. I think that Skype is a great option if visiting the classroom just isn't a possibility for you. So it really is something that should be explored, especially if you are very comfortable with technology. It's really not a difficult technology at all to use, and it's pretty foolproof. So it's definitely something to consider for kind of reaching out to a classroom that you can't visit in person.
Yeah, I actually met someone at the ATA conference who wanted me to do a school outreach presentation over Skype in Florida.
Oh, great.
And we haven't been able to make it work because of time differences. But yeah, it's definitely a good option. And Megan and I had talked about, before giving this webinar, about how great it would be to see some submissions for the school outreach contest with a Skype picture.
Yes, I think that would be wonderful, and there's no reason why you can't. So if anyone would like to submit a Skype photo for the contest, we'd love to see it. Really, it would just have to be a screenshot while the presentation is happening. So it would be a screenshot showing the Skype window with the video, and I think that would be really cool to see.
That would be really cool. So, okay, I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. And we'll move on to step 5, then, managing your nerves. First off, don't worry if you're nervous about public speaking. I would say that almost everyone is. So to reduce tension, we recommend taking deep breaths, dropping your shoulders, and smiling. Smiling really helps. You can just be a happy, bubbly presenter with a big smile on your face, and it will help to keep you calm. Arrive early to make sure you have time to set up and get a feel for your audience. Maybe the teacher will let you into class a little early, and you can watch the students and see how the classroom is set up. And keep in the back of your mind during your presentation that our profession is inherently interesting regardless of the age of the audience. And you're giving them a break from their normal classes, so they're usually very happy to see you there. And like I've said a lot of times, a lot of people aren't really aware of what we do in our work. So even if you start off your presentation with Harry Potter is translated into who knows how many languages, people get impressed immediately. You can say, I do that. I don't translate Harry Potter, but I do similar stuff. So people are usually pretty excited to hear about what we have to say. And be prepared by practicing. Practice a couple times at home even if it's just by yourself, to read through your presentation and do a little dress rehearsal. And take an informal approach to your presentation to take the pressure off. Use your sense of humor, tell jokes, ask what they find difficult about foreign languages. Everyone probably has a complaint about their foreign language, something that they struggle with. And ask them if they've ever seen a bad translation. That's a really nice icebreaker, and especially here in Europe, students are accustomed to seeing poor translations all across the continent. So that's a really nice icebreaker as well. And step 6, guidelines for taking a winning photo for the school outreach contest. The starred tip that we have here is that most winners plan their photos ahead of time. So they think of what they want to do and how they're going to do it, and they make sure to plan time to take the photo at the end of the class. So I would say leave at least 10 minutes to take the picture, and let the teacher know that this is a part of your presentation before you go. Don't take the teacher by surprise with the picture. Let them know, plan what you want to do, let the teacher know what your plan is, and then take the time to take the picture. Ask the teacher if it's okay to invite a photography-savvy friend to come along and take the picture. You can ask the teacher to take it. A couple other ideas if you don't know a photographer or if you don't feel comfortable asking the teacher. Another option is to ask the school newspaper or yearbook. They like to show off interesting things that happen during the school year. So ask if they'd like to come and take a picture of your presentation, and then ask if you can use the picture. Like I said, for my winning photo, I took it in the classroom, and I was lucky enough that the teacher I was working with was a hobby photographer. And I would say we took about 10 pictures before landing on one where everyone had their eyes open and no one was giggling and everyone was quiet and had their speech bubble in the right place. But that's not always the case either. Before the webinar, I was talking to Birgit, who is another school outreach winner and volunteer, and she said that she handed the camera off to the teacher, they took one picture, it turned out great, and she won the school outreach contest. I think the key here is good planning. Just make sure that you have an idea in mind. Make sure the photo clearly shows you're talking about translation and or interpreting. So that can be words behind you on a whiteboard, an interesting prop like you can see in this photo, classroom decorations like flags, foreign vocabulary, maps, anything that will spice up the picture a little bit. Include yourself and one or more students in the photo if you can. This is Rika Mitrick, the woman who I talked about her presentation before, and she won the school outreach contest in 2016 for this photo. And you can see the Japanese picture book that she's holding in her hands. One of the things you want to make sure is that the school's confidentiality policy allows for you to show the children's faces in the photos. If it prohibits showing the kids' pictures, you can try a shot that shows them from the back. This is almost all the kids from the back. I don't know if that was Rika's reason for setting up the picture this way. You can kind of see the face of one child. But there's lots of creative pictures that you can take where you don't see the children's faces, but you appear. And I really love this picture with all of the colors and the cute little kids. Aim for a photo that's clear enough for effective reproduction in the ATA Chronicle and promotional materials. This picture is a little fuzzy because I got it off the website, so it downloaded in a little bit of low quality, but the original photo was very clear. And I can't emphasize clarity enough for the contest. Make sure the picture has even lighting, that there's no projector screen lighting up behind you in the picture. Please don't stand in front of a window with the sun shining through. Try and make the photo as clear and as evenly lighted as possible. You are definitely free to do minor touch-ups to improve lighting or focus before you submit your picture, so you can do that as well. So the ideal photograph would combine all of these elements to create a picture that captures the fun of translation and interpreting, your passion for the profession, and the interest and engagement of your audience. This is one of my favorite photos. This was the 2006 School Outreach winner. And I love it because you can really see the interaction and the happy faces of everyone in the picture. There's a red fire truck in the background. The whiteboard talks about translation and interpreting. The fireman just looks happy as can be, as does the interpreter or translator. The children are excited to participate. You've got a guy on the phone. You can really see what they're doing in this picture, and you can tell that they all had a great time, and it looks like the kids are learning as well. So the 2017 contest is on. Speak on translation and/or interpreting careers at a school or university anywhere in the world between August 1st, 2016 and July 18th, 2017. I've got a little table here with the deadline and important links. You can send your entry online, or you can also send it via mail if you prefer that. All of this information is also in the handout. Note that on the deadline there's no time deadline, so you can submit your entry anytime throughout the day, anywhere in the world. We know we have submitters that might be halfway across the world. And you may submit multiple entries. So if you give multiple presentations, feel free to submit multiple pictures. They will all be considered equally. And keep in mind that this is strictly a photography contest. You'll see in the entry form online that we do ask for more information, like the school you visited, what you did in your presentation, but we don't measure the content of your presentation. We only take the photo into consideration and the quality of that photo for a winner. And we will let the winner know no later than August 20th so they can make plans to attend the conference. If you visit schools to speak to students about translation and interpreting, we would love to hear from you, whether or not you decide to submit a photo for the contest. So you can email our school outreach coordinator, Megan, with a description of when and where you presented, and let us know about your memorable experience. Your story may be added to the school outreach website. You can see on the screenshot there. And actually Megan's school outreach story about her Skype visit in France is there. So you can read more about that there. And we're always looking for new presentation material for our resource website. So you can email any scripts, outlines, PowerPoints, or even general tips or things that you learned during your presentation. And you can email that to schooloutreach@atanet.org. Any material you send in is greatly appreciated and will certainly be of help to other presenters. So if you would like to share that with us, we would once again really appreciate it. As one last motivation for participating, this is an absolutely adorable letter from a student to a school outreach presenter. I personally have gotten a number of cards and even gifts from schools and students for giving presentations. People really like to hear from us and they really like to get to know you. So I hope that this letter and that the manual in general is motivational and of help in encouraging you to give a school outreach presentation. And that is all for now. So we'll go on to questions, and Megan McCallum, the school outreach coordinator, is also here to help me answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much indeed. This is Lucy here in the UK. We do have a couple of questions, but please type into your questions pane if you have any queries or anything to ask Megan or Molly. Can I just start off with a question that we received? You actually briefly touched on it, I think. Is there a maximum number of submissions I can make in any one year or over the years?
There is no maximum submission. There's no limit, so you are free to submit as many entries as you would like. And we will consider them all equally.
Okay, I think Mary will answer the next one, ask the next one. I'll do it then. Okay, we're being asked, is the material sent to ATA, does that need to be in English?
Megan, could you answer that question? Do you know?
Sure. So we have received donations, I guess you could call them, of presentations to be recycled, and those can really be in any language. We do have the majority of our resource material in English, but that wasn't really an intentional practice, it just happened that way. So if you do have resource materials to share in a different language, that's more than welcome, and I'm sure it would be helpful for anyone who is planning to present in that language.
Okay, Mary's back. Let's see, there was a good one. Do I need to be an ATA member to submit?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, okay.
That was good. It's fast.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Is there a repository of translation bloopers in different languages in the resource section?
I don't think that there is. When I was searching for my translation bloopers for my presentation, I just did a Google image search for Spanish, English translation bloopers, and plenty come up. But I don't think there's anything. I don't think we have a list or a database of translation bloopers, do we, Megan?
I don't believe so. One thing that I have noticed is that several of our resource materials do include several slides or sections on translation bloopers with examples, but they're kind of within the presentations themselves. So it would take a little bit of digging around to find them. But I know that more than a few of our resources do include at least some examples. But you're right, Molly, I don't think we have any location where they're all compiled into one resource with just the bloopers.
Just to pick that thread up, Chris Durbin used to do a column called Onion Skin for the Chronicle, and we do have some of those, Birgit mentions we have some of those online. I will make sure that they are in the resources section, sort of pull them out in some way so that you can get those. They are kind of fun to do with the kids. They're fun to do with adults, so there you go. We have a few more questions, or actually we need a few more questions. Anybody have anything else? Lucy?
Okay, well, there's a couple of questions which I think you need to answer, Mary, rather than our presenters. But is there, supposing I don't have anyone to take a picture of me, whoops, I'm going to close that mic. Supposing I can't get hold of somebody who's a photographer and sort of savvy with the camera, have you got any suggestions how I might get around that?
Well, remember, the teacher doesn't have to be in the picture, so the teacher is a first resource. And again, this is I don't want to say amateur hour, but we appreciate the really natural sort of unposed, or a little bit posed, but just we're not doing a headshot for a professional organization or publication. This is to show the fun, as Molly said, the experience. Then you could get a teacher from another classroom. The school might even have a principal who would love to come in, a guidance counselor who would love to come in and see what you guys are doing. It's one more way to show people that translation and interpreting is a career. And hey, maybe even a parent would want to come in and do that. Just thought of that. So those are things that I would suggest. There are probably more, I'm just throwing some ideas out there. I think if you sit down and think about it, maybe your spouse will come in and take a photo. There are a lot of ways to cover this, so just give it a try.
Okay. Mary, there's a question there about distributing the handout. Are you, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. The handout is on the ATA website.
Okay.
So yeah, you can go to the web page and
yeah,
this webinar.
The questioner was asking whether they're free to distribute it to the local chapters.
Sure,
Yeah,
no problem. I mean, we want to get the information out. It's not, this is not a secret.
Yeah.
Only ATA, I mean, only ATA members can participate, but the information is free to everyone.
And one last question before we move over to your closing remarks is, can corporate members take part in the contest?
This question has come up before. I think the employees of a corporate member can certainly participate. Corporate members, the employees, actually have a certain number of benefits that they may not realize that they have. For example, they get the discounted rate for the ATA conference. So if you have a question, you can email me, mary@atanet.org, and or just look me up on our website, see About Us, and you'll find me there. I did want to move on to the next 3 webinars that we're going to do because 2 more of these are free, and they kind of touch on what Megan and Molly were talking about, well, especially Megan, on entering the market. So going from your classroom, your last year, into what are you going to face. The first one is with Catherine Allen. Many of you may know her. She's sort of a superstar out there. She was a professor at Monterey. And she's going to talk about the changing interpreting market because it's so different. There's so much disruption, so much change, price pressures. Students coming out of an interpreting program have got to be totally confused. So then the next one is February 7th, and it's the opposite side. It's going from a classroom to a translation career. And Jamie Hart's going to cover this one. She's been out there now for 2, maybe 3 years, and she can go, she'll cover everything, all the questions that she wished she had had answers to, the answers she's found out along the way through the School of Hard Knocks. So those 2 are free, and they're going to be on the website afterwards too, so you can certainly share them with everyone. The next 3rd webinar next is specialization. So I guess it kind of follows in with you're leaving school and you hear about specialization and why do you do it and how do you do it and is it important? Do you make more money? So Karen Kapchik, who's on the ATA Board of Directors, is going to do this one. It's February 9th, and I think she's just a good speaker. What can I say? And we talked about the conference a little bit. It is October 25th to the 28th this year. It will be in Washington, D.C., and there's just so many cool things to do here. Of course, I live here, so of course I'm going to say that. Anyway, we're accepting proposals through March the 3rd. If you think you can't do a proposal, we have a YouTube video. Actually, it's a webinar that's on YouTube that walks you through all of the steps to submitting a proposal. Look at the ATA channel on YouTube and you're going to find it. Corinne McKay presented it, and as many of you know, she's just a terrific presenter. And it's easier than you think, really, believe me. We also have, speaking of past webinars and recordings, we have more than 60 on-demand webinars. So just go to the main webinar page, www.atanet.org/webinars, and you're going to find a whole lot. And finally, I guess I just said this, www.atanet.org, webinars, that's where all of our webinars are. You can always email me, mary@atanet.org. So that wraps it up. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Megan. It was a great, great webinar. I hope to see you next time.